Okay, guys, welcome to Socialize today. So you can see at the top, we're going to look at foreign policy and diplomacy. Those are two important things that our government does with other countries. That's the foreign policy. So it's the United States and other countries. So I want you to look at interpersonal relationships. These are things we have and also our government has. So it says, which of these strategies have you used when you've had a problem with another person? Talk it over with the person and try to compromise. Find someone who can help the two of you solve the problem. That might be called mediation. Make a deal or arrangement with that person. Have a fight with that person. Stop talking to the person. Those are interpersonal things, and those are sometimes our government does too. Then it says with other people, are having a problem, do you get involved or try to help, or stay out of it and let them try to work it out? Okay. Those are all common problems that we have as human beings, and also, countries have with one another. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Okay, so it says foreign policy and diplomacy. We've got to work together. It says, do you know there are almost 200 countries in the world? That might be a little bit low. There might be a little bit more than that now. Each one has its own government, its own traditions, its own list of needs and wants. And since we're all here on the same planet, every country has to interact with other countries. No getting around it. A country's strategy for dealing with other countries is called its foreign policy. And a policy is a plan that includes an overall goal and the kind of actions that are okay to take in order to achieve the goal. A policy is like a guideline. It determines what kinds of decisions will be made and what actions will be taken. So here's one goal, two policies. Let's look at this one. Imagine that a country's goal is to have peaceful relationships with other countries. Policy A and policy B below show that there is more than one way to achieve that goal. Both policies aim to gain peace, but the action a country takes are very different, as are the likely outcomes. So let's look at policy A. Our policy might be to gain peace by talking. Under that policy, the government might decide to send people to negotiate with another country when there's a problem and come up with a compromise. Now, policy B, a different policy might be to gain peace through military force. Under that policy, the government might decide to invade a country when there is a problem, throw out that country's government, and put in a new friendly government. So the goal for both these policies is peace. Policy A would probably be more through diplomacy, talking, and policy B is more through force. You're going to invade the country, try to get rid of the problem, maybe get rid of the president, the dictator, and try to install a newer friendly government. Both those policies is trying to get peace, but they go at it two different ways. Okay? So it says looking out for number one. Has anyone ever told you were doing something for your best interest? A country is always trying to act in its own best interest by trying to get other countries to act in a way that are beneficial and not harmful. A country's natural interest in all these things is a country believes would be for its benefit. National interest ties directly to a country's foreign policy. For example, country A might make deals with other countries over who can use water from a river in country A, so country A can have water for fields. Or country A might go to war with these countries to try to get all the water for itself. Another example, country B, a wealthy country, might send money to help a poor country because it benefits country B to have a world where other countries are stable. Or country B might ignore the poor country's problems and use the money to build homeless shelters for country B's own people. So you look over here, national interest. Here are a list of some countries might consider part of the national interest. The environment, weapons of mass destruction, that might be like nuclear weapons, water rights, territorial boundaries, historical sites, hunger, spread disease, trade, energy or food production. So those are all in our country. We look at the United States, those are all goals basically in our country, natural interests. Okay. So it looks about foreign policy and diplomacy. Do we get involved or do we stay away? A country's attitude about foreign policy will lie somewhere on a continuum between isolation and internationalism. With a policy of internationalism, a country chooses to get involved with other countries' problems when there is a great need. With a policy of isolationism, a country focused on its own problems does not get involved in other countries' issues. So you can see on the spectrum, there's isolationism is way over here, internationalism, and then they have basically somewhere in the middle where maybe you do get involved a little bit with other countries, but in some ways too, you isolate and try to take care of your own country's problems. So there's kind of a mix depending on your country. Most are in the middle. Some go way to the left and some go way to the right. Okay. It says all alone in the world. Maybe you've heard the expression, it's a small world. Advances in technology make countries more connected with each other than ever before. This makes it harder and harder for countries to practice isolationism and ignore what's going on in the world around them. Most countries lean towards international because they recognize the trouble in the world affects everyone. For example, an unstable country that does not enforce its internet laws can be a safe place for people who want to hack into computer systems around the world. To protect its own citizens, other countries might pressure that government to enforce its laws. So you can see technology is a big thing, and that's an example. If we just didn't care about what other countries did about the internet, and it happened just recently, I think Russia hacked into like 19 major databases in the United States. So technology is a huge thing. So you really have to try to get involved to make sure that countries are enforcing laws, making sure people aren't hacking into other countries, especially like our government systems. And that's what happened. Russia hacked into some of our government systems. So it's important to try to be a little more towards internationalism because it does matter what goes on in other countries. Okay, so this is a look at how we create foreign policy in the United States. And we talked about the three branches of government. You know, we had the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch. So it says each of these branches has a role shaping foreign policy. The executive branch, which would be the presidency, has the most of the power to determine what our foreign policy is going to be. Okay, so we're just going to look at what each of these three branches does. So the president decides what the country's foreign policy is going to be on issues of national interest. The president negotiates treaties with other countries, signs treaties after approved by Senate. President may order the military to act under some circumstances, and the State Department, part of the executive branch, carries out foreign policies around the world. And if you were watching the news yesterday, our country, we did just, we had a military strike in Syria of some Iranian forces because right now in Iran, they're really ramping up the production of nuclear weapons. And there's not a treaty right now. So the United States was kind of sending a message to Iran that, be careful about what you're doing with all your nuclear weapons. Okay. So that's kind of what current president did. And he ordered a military act. So that's a perfect example right there. Now we go up to Congress. That's the legislative branch. Only Congress can officially declare war. The Senate must approve these treaties. Congress passes bills related to the president's foreign policy, and Congress influences foreign policy by supporting or opposing the president's goals. If opposed, the president may make policy compromise. And the last thing, the judicial branch, they just review treaties to see if they fall in line with our Constitution. So each of the three branches has a little hand in foreign policy, but certainly the president plays the largest role, or the executive branch. Okay, so this says, this is an activity, but and you guys can do it when we're done here. Imagine you're the president. On the desk is a list of 5 actions that might be in our national interest. Choose the top 3 you think would be in the national interest, then rank your top 3 with 1 as your highest and 3 as your lowest. You're going to pick 3 of these and just put 1, 2, 3. So it's stop a dictator from developing a nuclear weapon. Give money to a poor country so it can vaccinate its citizens against deadly diseases. Send money to develop a better stealth airplane for our military. pressure another country to strengthen its laws against internet hacking, run television ads supporting a candidate in another country with president's election. So you have to pick three of those five. What would be your number one choice if you were president, your second most important, your third most important? And then you're going to circle what you think is number one, and then basically ask you to kind of fill this out. Like, you're going to be present. You're going to talk about why you picked that one. So you're just going to fill in this if you want. And then there are just some more vocabulary words down here. This asks you what could happen that would make you change your third priority to your first. So you have to look at why would you make your third priority your first. Up here is a Venn diagram. It just asks you to go back and look at kind of this diagram right here and fill in the blanks. All these things that are in the circles are listed right over here. So you're just filling in what the executive branch, what's the legislative branch, what the judicial branch does. Here it gives you two examples of three possible ways for a country to react to international situations. So you're just going to pick what you think, whether it's isolationist or internationalist. So I'll go ahead and post this in social studies in Google Classroom. It's just important to remember, because since there's so many countries, it's important how we deal with other countries. And obviously, certain countries deal with other countries better, certain countries deal with other countries worse. It just depends on really what your priority is in that country. So, all right, you guys have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.